So on today's episode, I would like to introduce our new guest, Xavier Scruggs, and I would love if you can just break down who you are, where you're from, hometown, college, and what you've done in your professional life and what you're up to currently.
Yeah, man. First and foremost, thank you for having me on here.
Of
I
course.
feel very blessed to have the opportunity, man. Anytime I get a chance to kind of tell my story, it's always special to me. So thank you for having me on here.
Of course.
Man, just a little bit about me, my background. I come from Southern California, San Diego specifically. Went to Poway High School, North County, San Diego. Played multiple sports growing up. Sports was my thing. But ended up being baseball was the one I narrowed it down to, and got drafted out of high school to the Seattle Mariners. Actually decided to turn that down and go to college. College was something that was always near and dear to my heart. Both of my parents both graduated from four-year university. So it was something that I was always kind of excited about, just that college lifestyle, that college experience. So got the opportunity to get a scholarship to go to UNLV, Las Vegas. Great baseball organization, great baseball program. Before I got there, they had made a couple of regionals. So I was like, yeah, why not, man? Why not experience it in a city like that where they have so much to offer? And college was really an opportunity for me to grow up and say, hey, let me give myself 3 years to really develop as a player, as a person, and give myself another opportunity to get drafted. So luckily, and by the grace of God, that was what I did. I was able to stay focused enough. Obviously, Vegas is tough to stay focused, but was able to stay focused enough to where got an opportunity to get drafted again by the St. Louis Cardinals. Played with the Cardinals in the minor leagues for 6 or 7 years before I got called up to the big leagues. Played in the big leagues with them for a couple of years, and then went on to the Miami Marlins, played with them, and then took my talents over to Korea for a couple of years.
Nice.
Played overseas there. Played in Mexico in 2019, and 2020 I officially retired. So it's been a long road. Baseball has been very, very good to me, so I can't complain in that sense. But now I'm excited about this transition into life outside of playing on the field.
That's awesome, man. I appreciate that background. I want to ask, because everyone goes through this, I feel like, at least athletes who play multiple sports. Like, when was the time, or when was like the year that you had to make that decision? Was it like freshman year, sophomore year, where you were like, all right, I'll start? And what other sports did you play, and how hard was the decision to make to go into just baseball and focus strictly on baseball?
Yeah, no, the decision was tough. I played basketball and football as well.
Mm-hmm.
I played all the way up until my senior year. I narrowed it down to baseball. So that was tough. I remember still having the conversation with my mom. She was a basketball fiend. So she was the one that kind of raised me to play basketball. Basketball was my first love. But I just realized like the guys were getting too tall for me. Football, the guys were getting too strong. So I was like, let me stick with what I can be good at and get an opportunity for a scholarship. And even though those sports were so much fun, I knew I had to narrow it down when we're talking about going on to the next level,
Right.
and being a professional as well. I always had aspirations to be a professional, so I knew baseball was going to be my best opportunity. So I had to narrow it down. It wasn't easy, but at the same time, I knew in order for me to go as far as I wanted to go, baseball was going to be it.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I feel like any athlete, professional athlete specifically, they all have that moment, that realization, because there are so many, they're so talented that they must play different sports and other sports, I know like Patrick Mahomes, for example, Russell Wilson with baseball, and then they decide to become quarterbacks in the NFL. And it's just crazy. These guys were literally, I think, first round picks. And they were like, hey, I'm going to pass on this and I'm going to go take on my passion and, in their opinion, what was best for them. And it's a tough decision, I'm sure, to make in that moment. Putting the love of basketball behind you, other sports, and focusing on one, because I'm someone who likes to diversify, and try different things and play different things, especially from a mental standpoint. Because it's just like, if you're in a funk on the baseball field, it's like, at least I can go to the basketball court and make some jumpers. to get myself out of that funk and build some confidence. So
Yeah.
that's awesome, and I appreciate that. And now that you're retired, first, congratulations on retirement.
Thank
But
you.
it's not really retirement. It's now that next chapter and that next journey. Would you mind opening up and just like, what is your vision? What are you looking to do over these next couple of years?
Yeah, man, I'm still trying to search on that. I think
Nice.
for me, it's just kind of figuring out what I can be good at. Trying to dabble into media communications. I've started a business, Extraordinary Athletes, in
Congrats.
which we'll be helping players learn how to use their platforms, whether that be dive into the community, whether that be learn how to be better with their finances, as well as diversity initiatives. So Extraordinary Athletes will be helping specifically the Cardinals this year, the St. Louis Cardinals, on those specific initiatives. So we're excited about that. So yeah, the business venture is what I'm excited about, as well as media. I've been doing some work for ESPN, MLB Network, and Major League Baseball as well. So I'm excited for that next kind of chapter, wherever it takes me. And I'm still trying to figure out what I like, and what I want to get involved in. And the good thing is, the opportunity for me to kind of go get an education and figure out what I like outside of baseball has kind of helped me into that transition of, okay, what's next?
Right.
So I'm very blessed in that sense, and happy that I can be able to kind of dive into different aspects of outside the game.
That's awesome, man. And, I think on the first thing you touched on, because for me, I'm focused on personal branding, working with athletes, executives, thought leaders. It's so important, and it's great to hear on your end how and understand how important personal branding is, for individuals, athletes. And yeah, you played professionally for multiple years, but, it's long term, right? How can I create these, revenue streams that are going to consistently come in? How can I get, in these networks where partnership deals are happening and I can become an ambassador and get some equity stake in a business? I think, more athletes more than ever are noticing these things and seeing how can I partner up with people or get involved with people who are, in that world. And I think the people in that world, entrepreneurs, love athletes so much. And it's a great combination of the two. And one thing I always speak about, just for myself, I didn't play professionally, but I played at a high level in sports, and, still continuously play golf and ball. And my competitiveness, right, in the business world, and that athlete mentality. I feel like you have a leg up. I spoke to Laura Wild on this. She's a mental coach for the Clippers. And I feel like it gives us an advantage, and especially professionally, right, where you dedicated your life. It was a job, and you got paid for that, right? For me, it was more just recreational and fun. But at the same time, at a young age, I learned how to be a captain. I learned how to be a leader of my team. I learned that there were going to be ups and downs, and also understanding that this person across the court playing defense on me, like, I'm coming after him. I'm going to get this, right? And I'm going to score on you. And that mentality, I think, is so valuable in business today. Has that been something that you feel, obviously in sports, but now that you're transitioning into this new world, kind of gives you a leg up on people who you're competing with, and let's say in the anchor world, or, being an analyst or a personality?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if necessarily a leg up is the right sense of the word. I would say, like you said, the competitiveness allows me to understand that if I fail, it's only going to be on me.
Right.
So I think, if anything, it kind of brings upon the responsibility upon yourself, especially
Right.
baseball, because baseball is an individual sport within a team sport. So anything that you do, you have to be able to do it for yourself and the team. And then also with baseball, you're failing most of the time as a hitter, especially. If you're going 1 for 3, you strike out 2 times, you're still, batting average is 333, which is Hall of Fame status if you're able to keep it up for a career. So I think the biggest thing for me is understanding how to deal with failure. Even though I fail or have a tough time, I've understand and been through a process to where it doesn't matter what happened yesterday. I can build off of that and get better today. But a lot of people go through that. People go through failure even without sports, and they've learned to build themselves on a foundation to where, okay, you know what, failure is able to build into success. So I think that's the biggest thing, is kind of understanding whatever you do, that failure doesn't mean you're ultimately down and out. It means, how do I make adjustments? How do I get better?
Yeah,
And how do I see myself down in the future and not just be so focused on what happened in the past?
I love that,
That's
man.
the biggest thing for me. And I feel like another thing in that sense, too, is the way that I was raised. My parents, both seeing them go through a 4-year university, they always stressed to me how important the education side was, and not just to be an athlete, but to be more than that. So I think that's another thing that kind of, if you want to talk about getting an edge, I think at a young age, I understood how important it was to be able to diversify myself besides just being an athlete. Because my mom, she used to point out to me, look at this guy who he owns his own business, but also he is the linebacker for the Chargers. Or look at this guy who is a center in the NBA, but also, he has his money in order and he's able to give back to the community. Like, those are some of the role models I got to see early on. And I saw, okay, there's not just one way to be an athlete. You can have your hand in everything if you want it.
I love it, man. And I have a feeling I'm going to like your parents a lot too if I ever meet them. I want to, on that point, man, I want to chat about those 6 years of when you were drafted to when you were going to the league and were called up to the Cardinals. I'm sure you had to overcome back to the failures, right? Obstacles and challenges that were really tough that you had to go through. Would you mind speaking on what those obstacles and challenges were, whether you were in funks? Did you have moments where you were like, this isn't for me and maybe I should leave baseball and, pursue something else? And then obviously, what was that feeling in 2014 when you were called up to the Cardinals?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing when you kind of talk about those obstacles is just understanding that you don't go straight to the show. Like, you have to put in your time,
Right.
especially if you're not a first pick in the draft. You got to put in your time. For me, it was about that 4th, 5th year, kind of seeing some of my other friends like either get to the big leagues or guys that kind of left the game and decided to go do something else and be employed doing something else. So it was kind of that crossroads period that was probably tougher for me. It was like, okay, I'm not making good money in the minor leagues. You make little to no money, but still with the hopes and dreams of being a major leaguer. So I think it's kind of almost that balancing act of, okay, like, how much do I really want to go after this dream, and how much do I want to say, is this for me? Or I could be doing something else. So that was kind of the thing for me, is just those mental battles. But ultimately for me, I knew that it was a dream that, if I let it go, I'd be regretting it. So I just tried to battle it out as long as possible. And I knew what I was capable of as a player. So that was probably the toughest thing for me. But also, being away from your family, traveling as an athlete is tough. You're away from your family. I have a brother that who's 2 years younger than me. I didn't get to see him do a lot of things. I didn't get to see him graduate from college. I didn't get to see him get married and throw a bachelor party for him, just because you're doing stuff inside the season and you miss a lot of those opportunities. So that's probably one of the toughest things. But baseball has brought me so many other high moments. I can't complain whatsoever.
That's awesome, man. And I think a lot of people at a young age don't realize it. They're pursuing their dreams, but they have to understand they're making sacrifices too, and to get to where you want to go, you have to at the end of the day, and the richest men in the world sometimes are single, don't have a family, right? Like a Jeff Bezos, for example. It's just because they're putting in so much time and effort into their business that it's pretty much impossible, right? We don't have unlimited time on this earth. So it's so important and valuable to understand that at a young age and realize that. And I commend you and admire the fact that just trusting and following your dream, right? Trusting your gut, saying like, this isn't the way that I saw this, and understanding you had this vision and getting there in this goal and never stopping, especially when you had, and a lot of people, a lot of the time, you have these distractions. You have friends around you who are doing things and you're like, oh, should I go dabble in this? Should I dabble in this? But you stayed focused in who you were. And to me, that's the most important part. And on that, I like to discuss on this show about like your core foundation, right? So your principles, your values. And I know you've spoken about your parents and how much they've influenced you in your life. I would love to hear a little bit more about them, and the values they set in your household. And then are there other people in your life? For me, my grandfather stepped in as my role model when my dad passed at a young age. I named my company after him. He was someone who I idolized and really watch build a family and grow somewhat of an empire, right? Of these 25 people who would go on vacation every year together. And I'm just as close with my cousins as I am my own intimate family. And it's just, for me, those things are so important, so valuable. And I put them into my business, the culture of my company, those values that I was taught at a young age. So back to that point, can you just speak a little bit more on your parents and that foundational setting that was set for you, and who those people were that kind of were your support system when things got rough?
Yeah, definitely. My parents were played a huge part, very influential. I never take for granted that they've been able to help raise me in the way that they did. And they're a couple that's been married for over 40 years. I still try to see them as much as possible. They actually moved out here to Florida, close to me.
Nice.
So it's good that they're still really close in my life. They used to come to all my games, whether it be college, minor leagues, major leagues. So throughout the whole way, they've always been there. And when you kind of talk about values, I think one of the biggest things they instilled in me was the idea that, nothing is given to you. You have to work for everything, especially being somebody who was raised and in an area where I was raised in an affluent area. And a lot of times you see kids just given certain things, right? That's one of the big issues that we have today is like a lot of kids think they're entitled to certain things. So that was probably one of the biggest things that they let me know is, hey, nothing is given to you in this world. You have to go out there and earn it. You got to go take it for yourself. And there's going to be tough times. There's always going to be trials and tribulations. There's going to be obstacles that you go through. And I think that's where faith really plays a big part. I'm a huge believer. I'm Christian, and faith has always played a huge part in my life. So that's that. If there's been any one thing that's gotten me over some of those obstacles, it's that. And just knowing that God has a great plan for me, and I'm able to see something great in the future in myself. So that's always been a big part for me. And when you kind of talk about mentors, for me, I had so many. It's just tough to narrow them down. But I mean, from baseball point of view, I had Tony Gwynn, I had a David Justice in my life. I had a Rupert Jones, an old school player. I had Ozzie Smith. My dad went to school with Ozzie Smith. So a lot of guys. I had a Ludwig who was with the Cardinals before I got there. He went to UNLV, so we already had that connection. So there was so many guys that I was able to go into, especially talking about baseball point of view. They were able to give me so many of those life lessons that didn't even have anything to do with baseball. They had more to do with being a good human being, have to do with getting into business, having to do with dealing with people and having good relationships with people. So there was so many of those instances, and I wouldn't be where I am today without mentors, without my family, without a support system. They're the ones that really hold you down when you go through tough times.
That's incredible, man. I mean, what a support system, especially out of the baseball world. I mean, you just mentioned some of the greatest and guys I looked up to when I was a kid, and I'm sure being able to speak to them, have conversations with them when you get to the big leagues, it's just like another guy, which I'm sure gave you a lot of confidence when you were, stepping to the plate or just having conversations with them or meeting, idols like Derek Jeter and people like that. They're just human beings at the end of the day. And that's someone, like Derek Jeter, for example, always loved how he carried himself. I'm from New York, of course, so big fan. But when you look at Derek Jeter, why was he so successful? Look at the Tom Brady's. Again, you look at their parents. And that to me was everything. Derek's dad, his mom, they just had the right values, core values. They never were about the, glamorous lifestyle. And you can see that. And it pays dividends. It really does. And that, that's something, like I mentioned, not just my company, but myself, I'm very big on, because I think a lot of times, a lot of people forget about it. They're chasing the money, they're chasing, the cash. And for someone, I went to Syracuse University, and at Syracuse, as Jaffin as well, who I know you're working with, he, when I went to Syracuse, I was around a lot of kids who had a lot of money. And, I grew up in an affluent neighborhood in Great Neck in Long Island. But at the same time, Syracuse was just a different level because I was out on my own. And seeing all these rich kids, they had so many insecurities. And I was just like, what's going on? Why aren't they happy? You know, I was confident in who I was and what I was doing, what I was up to. I'm like, I'm the one that should have insecurities. I lost a father at a young age. Like, I'm the one who should be the one that's damaged. But then when you realize, like, they were raised by their nannies, they weren't raised by their parents. Their parents weren't there, giving them these values. My mom would always say, you can't teach love. And I believe in that wholeheartedly, because it comes from your mom, your dad being home, giving you those hugs, having those deep conversations with you when you don't even realize you're ready for them. And, for me, that's another thing I want to talk on, because you mentioned it earlier about, being in the minors, moving to the major leagues, and how you weren't able to see your family, your loved ones as much. And it's something that I speak on a lot when it comes to work-life balance. And it's finding time and making time for the people that you love. And I think that when it comes to fulfillment and success and happiness, there has to be some sort of balance. And you can go all in and go 100% in your business, but you're going to burn out at some point. You're going to need those people. And when push comes to shove, you need to make sure you're giving them your all and your energy, because maybe they won't be there when you need them most. So that's a topic I love to chat on. So like when it comes to work-life balance, now that you're obviously out of the league and you've retired, is that something you're focused on? Because for me, my mom, my dad were home by 3:00 every day. My dad would take me to basketball practice, baseball practice, coach my teams. If I needed to come home from school early, my mom was there, and we had dinner together every single night. And, even though I had 12 years and my dad wished I had more, those 12 years, I had more time with him than some people have in 20 or 25 years with their parents. And for me, that just carried everything. And that's who I am today. And that's why I feel so much and care so much about this topic. And would love to just have, share about your experiences and what you've learned from it. And now moving forward, I know you have 2 little boys, like discussing how important it is to be there for them and raise them. And then also your wife as well. And then your parents, and giving back to them for all they've done and the sacrifices they made for you.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think you raise a good point. Eventually you'll burn out at some point if you put all your, energy and eggs in one basket and just being focused on one specific spot without, truly letting yourself be happy and allowing yourself to dive into your support system and, just enjoying the fruits of your labor and whatnot. So I'm a really big believer in just taking the time out, man. You like giving yourself a refresher, recovering yourself. Obviously we talk about in sports, recovery is so important. I think part of that is mental recovery, right? So if that's, allowing yourself to not think about the game for a while, allowing yourself to, be with your wife, allowing yourself to really dive into time with your sons, like you said, eventually there comes a point when, you don't want to look back and say, okay, I wish I spent more time doing this, or I wish I spent more time, with my father or my mother, whatever it may be. You don't want to have those regrets. So for me, it's like, nothing is more important than family. Business can wait at times. Obviously you got to be focused on what you want to build. If you're talking about building a business, a legacy, you're talking about building an influence. Those are all the things I want to build. So when we talk about work-life balance, there has to be sacrifice at a time when you don't have to put something in front of the other. So if I want to be able to build something, that means me getting up 4:00, 5:00 before my kids get up, and that way, when my kids get up, I have the time to be focused on them, and I have the time to take them to school, whatever that may be, play with them in the morning. So that way my time isn't divided in that sense. So that work-life balance is huge. You just have to figure out how to set your priorities, right? A lot of times I think when we don't have our priorities in order, that's when our work-life balance gets messed up because, I didn't take care of this in the morning when I had the time. Now I'm divvying up time later on in the day when it should go towards my wife or go towards my kids or go towards my parents. And that's when you start breaking promises, right? Or breaking those agreements that you might have had. Like, I told you I was going to do this, but now I got to do something else. So that's the priorities is huge for me. Setting a good routine, I think that takes care of a lot of things. So when you talk about work-life balance, I think having yourself organized in that sense becomes really important.
Definitely. And accountability, right? So knowing that if you're setting out to do something, that you're fulfilling whatever that goal or that promise is. And I think, today, especially during the pandemic, my business is all remote. I've been doing this for the last 3 years and been pushing it. And obviously nowadays everyone sees, okay, we can actually survive in remote work. And it's something that I think is going to shift. And I think that model is shifting today, where you're going to have this hybrid approach with corporations, where you used to go into the office 5 days a week. Now you'll go in 2 days a week and you'll work remotely 3 days a week, and less overhead for the business. So larger margins. And at the same time, like more time for your family, to your point, and being around the people you love, which I think if you're happy with your day-to-day family life, then that is only going to help you when it comes to your business and your work. And if you're an employer and you have employees, like that should be your number one goal, is making sure that they are as clear-headed as possible, rather than them kind of looking back at you and resenting you, which I think in my industry and social media for the last 6 years, I think a lot of the young talent has that mentality. We've been hardened because social media never sleeps. So these agencies would just basically say, we'll give you 24/7 support. And it's not the VPs that are giving you 24/7 support. It's obviously the more junior level people in the industry that are kind of building it up. And I think that's so important, when it comes to health, physical health, getting your workouts in. I'm sure you're, all about working out. I see on your Instagram, I work out every morning. I don't start my day till around 10:30. I don't take meetings before then, because it's so important for me to have that sleep and that routine. But at the end of the day, those are sacrifices. Those are phone calls I can be making for my business. But I'd rather put those in front of the others. And then also, after work, dinner with the wife and, with kids, and making sure that you have some time together. It's so valuable, man. And everything that you stand for, I absolutely love. This is one of our more deeper conversations we've had. So I really appreciate you opening up and being vulnerable in front of the camera, because I can see that we're very like-minded in many ways. And I think that as I get older, I start realizing that, I have a lot of friends who I grew up with from childhood who I'm still close with today. Like 10 of them came on my bachelor party. They're brothers for life. But as I get older, I start realizing that, I want to surround myself with people who have these core values, who were raised the same way, and have that same vision and hustle. And those are the people you want to hold on tight to and keep holding on tight. And it's going to be a small world in many ways, where it's like, oh, this person, it's because you get each other, and it creates just good vibes, a good ecosystem. And for me, I think that's everything in life. And on that, we're coming to a close, and I can't thank you enough, Xavier. And I have a couple questions that I ask all my guests and would love to get your take on it. I know baseball might be the answer for this one, but hopefully you have some other answers. So when it comes to, I like to call it my medicine. So when it comes to when you're having tough time, stress, anxious, whether that is an interview, an exam, a big game, and you need to clear your mind from everything, where is that safe haven? Where is that spot that you go where your mind is clear and you're not thinking about anything else in the world? Obviously a baseball field, but are there other places? For me, it was the basketball court, golf course, and music. So I like to ask, what is your medicine?
Yeah. For me, it's a couple of things. The gym is one of my top places. I remember having, I was getting drafted and I was seeing the names go by, and my name hadn't gotten drafted. It was like the 10th round. I was like, you know what, man, I got to blow off some steam. I got to take it to the gym. So anytime I'm kind of like mentally, stressed a little bit, thinking about something, need to get something off my chest, I'll take it straight to the gym. It's either the gym or taking it to the Bible or prayer. Those are the main things that kind of help me kind of release all those things and be able to get focused back on track.
That's awesome. Now I have to ask, were your parents people who worked out a lot or went to the gym?
Yeah, my parents went to the gym. My dad, he was a guy that 5 o'clock in the morning, straight to the gym every morning. Like I saw him literally get up every morning, go to the gym. He would turn on ESPN, leave on ESPN before I got up to get ready for school. So it was like I knew he was working out, and I knew I was going to be watching ESPN in the morning before school.
Isn't it so funny? I asked that because for me, it's my mom. My mom does 3 spin classes. Well, before the pandemic, would do 3 spin classes a day. Now she literally just works out for 2.5 hours. And when I see that she's 65 years old, I'm just like, what am I doing with my life if I'm not up there and running? And you need that influence. You need that role model. And I think people need to understand how valuable that is, that we're always watching as children. We're always watching what you're doing, how you're acting. And it influences our life, and then you just carry it on, the legacy to your kids. And I'm sure your kids see you in the gym every day and they want to work out with daddy, and they want to, get that. As I like to say, I like to just let it out, the exertion of just like the pumping out, the benching, or for me nowadays, it's more cardio and toning. Back in the day, it was more benching and lifting. As we get older, you got to watch that back and those hips. But, that's so important and so valuable. And then the last thing I like to ask my guests is top three. So I'm going to start off with, who are your top three comedians?
Top three comedians. I will go with Martin Lawrence, Mike Epps, and Eddie Murphy. Those are my top three. Amazing.
Mike Epps, one of my favorite scenes of all time is in All About the Benjamins, when he's buying the lotto ticket. And they go like, he does the number thing, and it's one of my favorite scenes.
Yeah, I just saw him on Saturday here, and he had a Super Bowl comedy show here at
nice.
It was cool.
It was awesome.
Yeah, I don't even remember the last time I laughed consistently for 2 hours like that in a long time.
I believe it. He's one of the GOATs. Very underrated too. A lot of people wouldn't even know him, not as mainstream. Next will be top three movies of all time.
Top three movies, man, that's a tough one of all time for me. My favorite movie is Remember the Titans. I love that movie. I know it's a Disney movie, but it just kind of represents for me like baseball in a sense, because there's so much culture in it, right? Like you bring in two different cultures within one sport, and really you have to understand each other, and you start to develop a team aspect of things. So that was one of my favorite movies of all time. Man, that's a good one. I love Forrest Gump, just because he takes you through history. And another football movie too.
That's so funny. How many times do you say Jen A to like your wife or just around the house? I do it all the time.
Man, and then a baseball movie, Major League. Man, you got to go with the classic. So.
Love it, man. Yep, Charlie Sheen. Oh man, I love Major League movies. I put them on. My wife's like, "What is this?" I'm like, "This is greatness right now. Like you need to watch this." And then my last question will be, actually on that point too, the marbles. That's literally one of my favorite scenes in any movie of all time, when he's at the plate you got no marbles, and then
you got no marbles, man.
Exactly, Pedro Serrano. And then the last question I have is basically just top three cities, as someone who's, I'm sure, traveled, gone around Korea, as you mentioned, and you can just say countries in general, but just top three places that you've really visited, that you absolutely love the culture, you love the vibe, and, excited to go back.
Yeah, man, that's a tough one. Tokyo has to be up there for one of them. Thailand, I love Thailand. Nice. And then Mexico City. I had a really good time, Mexico City. Those are my top three outside of the United States. But other than that, San Diego, home, that's number one.
That's awesome, man. All right, we're coming to a close. Xavier, thank you so much for your time again. Appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to obviously staying in touch and working together. And say what up to Jaffin for me, please.
I will. Appreciate you having me, man.